Video Girl.
Charli XCX's sixth studio album BRAT, released June 7th, has exploded into the mainstream and has had a cultural impact like no other release this year. It's become inescapable on Twitter, Instagram, and my For You page, from the Apple dance to the Everything is Romantic montages. BRAT has also broken records in Charli's career. In its first week, it accumulated a total of 82,000 equivalent album unit sales and came in at number 3 on the Billboard 200, following Crash's number 7 peak in 2022. BRAT also has achieved a Metacritic score of 95 as one of the highest rated albums of 2024 and the 16th highest rated of all time on the platform. I've seen many people saying things like, Charli's been making this music for the past 8 years and now you all want to like it? Or, BRAT is nothing special or different to what Charli has been making since 2016. And yes, I can see these people's points of view in some ways. However, as someone who has been a fan of Charli for the last 12 years, I believe there are multiple key reasons as to why BRAT is the album that has propelled Charli back into mainstream conversation. Today, we're going to explore why she is just now receiving her flowers with the album BRAT specifically, as opposed to the last 5, and I can't wait to dive in with you. Welcome to Video Girl, an online community where we discuss and analyze pop culture and music. I'm so excited you all have been loving my BRAT series. I've made a playlist of the whole series on my channel, and I'll have it linked below, so make sure to check it out. I've also recently made a Video Girl Spotify to share all my favorite music finds with you, and I'm going to be starting a monthly playlist to highlight and discover new independent artists. Submissions are going to be starting soon, so don't forget to follow my Spotify and my Instagram so you don't miss when they open. If you're watching in the future, feel free to check the description as they may already be open. I want to turn my platform into an educational space for emerging artists and uplift them as the music industry is such a wild place to navigate. Let's do a quick run through of Charli's career to catch us up to where we are today. The last time we saw Charli mentioned this much in mainstream music conversation was back in 2012, with her feature on HYPERPOP's smash hit I Love It, and then in 2014 with her inescapable radio anthems Boom Clap and Fancy with Iggy Azalea. These songs were her first entries into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100, with Fancy hitting the number 1 spot. After Charli's 2015 album Sucker didn't perform as well as expected, we saw her take a complete 360 with her sound and career. In 2016, she teamed up with producers A.G. Cook and Sophie, and the Vroom Vroom EP was born. The sonic landscape that was Charli XCX totally shifted, and we saw Charli and her collaborators invite us into a more futuristic, electronic, and experimental take on pop music. At the time, this wasn't well received by critics, with Pitchfork giving it a rating of 4.5 out of 10. 8 years later, the release of the Vroom Vroom EP marks a monumental moment in what pop music has shifted towards today, and people are now realizing how ahead of her time Charli and her collaborators have been. Charli has carried on with this sound and experimentalism in her music ever since 2016, and still works heavily with A.G. Cook, who executive produced BRAT. Rest in peace to the legend and icon that is Sophie. The number one thing that I think a lot of the astronomical success of BRAT comes down to is timing, and the shifts we've seen in the mainstream over the last few years. Shifts in trends and culture can usually be reflected when we look at the current landscape of music and fashion that is popular at the time. Right now in fashion, I definitely think the trends in the mainstream lean towards alt and edgy, and there's an emphasis on the kind of it's in to be weird take on fashion and personal aesthetics that belong to more niche and specific groups of people before this. If we take a look at fashion brands like Heaven by Marc Jacobs and Jaded London, we can see these trends, and it's a major shift from the Instagram baddie look that was very popular around 2019 to 2021. That then leads us on to music. I remember when the Vroom Vroom EP first came out. There was a very particular niche of people who were already into PC music, the music label A.G. Cook founded, or were introduced to it through the Vroom Vroom EP and loved it. It was a tight-knit, loyal group of fans, and people like A.G. and Sophie were their icons. I remember discovering Cutie, a fictional pop star created by Sophie and A.G. online, and thinking how I'd never seen anything like it. Fast forward to 2020, due to the pandemic and creatives being locked away in their rooms with time to be inspired and experiment, the genre we know as hyperpop began to emerge. Hyperpop is actually a term coined by Spotify, who made a playlist to put a label on a collection of music and artistic circles that the industry didn't have a name for yet. I think a lot of people loosely throw around the word hyperpop to describe Charli and her counterpart's sound, and while this isn't technically wrong, they inspired what became known as hyperpop, rather than intentionally creating a genre. Charli put it best in this interview.
What drew you to it?
I have never been drawn to hyperpop. I'm not really into genres at all, but
I think it's a genre that came out of like the pandemic with kids being able to be in their bedroom and simultaneously be very on the internet and kind of like ingest this bedroom production inspired by layers of the internet and people like myself, Sophie, Drain Gang, 100 Gex, and amalgamating a lot of the sounds that all of those people were creating, but then kind of like churning it out into this new thing. Like that's what I personally see hyperpop as. And definitely when Sophie and myself made the Vroom Vroom EP, we had no clue what hyperpop was. We were just kind of making stuff that we felt really inspired by.
The sonics we know as hyperpop began to have a life of their own. They expanded everywhere from niche to more mainstream spaces. We've seen artists like Breakins, Glaive, and Eric Doer lead their careers with these sounds. And on a larger scale, we've seen artists like Camila Cabello toy with it in her single I Love It. Not only that, but we've also seen a huge rise in electronic music in the past couple of years, from Beyoncé's renaissance to artists like Fred again being at the height of their careers. I think over the past 4 years, as the popularity of quote-unquote hyperpop has risen and electronic music has nudged its way back into the mainstream, listeners have become more and more receptive to these types of sonics, way more than they would have been 8 years ago when Vroom Vroom first came out. So yes, Charli has been making music with these same sonics for the past 8 years, but as the music industry and music tastes have shifted, now a much wider scale of people are open to music like hers, and just in time for the release of Brat. Speaking of perfect timing, it also dropped just at the beginning of summer, which is the perfect season for the album to live its best life in. Brat isn't one of Charli's most experimental or out there works, like the Vroom Vroom EP, How I'm Feeling Now, or Pop 2, but it is digestible enough to new listeners who have just become accustomed to this sort of hyperpop/electronic sound, while it still feels super Charli and authentic to her fans. I think what separates Brat from her previous albums is the lyrics. Not only does Charli talk about being wild, messy, and a party girl, she also dives into her negative inner voices, anxieties, and insecurities. Charli said regarding the lyrics for this album, "I'm over the idea of metaphor and flowery lyricism, and not saying exactly what I think the way I would say it to a friend in a text message." This take on her writing is not only refreshing, but also relatable to a lot of teenagers and young adults who are just now finding her music. Charli discusses topics like comparing herself to other women on Sympathy as a Knife and Girl So Confusing, talks on family issues and dynamics on Apple, reminisces on her past and younger years on Rewind, and thinks about her future and the prospects of having kids one day in I Think About It All the Time. As a young adult, these are all topics I have gone round and round in my head about, and Charli singing about them gives me a vessel to explore and understand them in myself. While the music itself is amazing, I feel as if these topics are what have helped hook new fans, keeping them coming back as they are timeless and relatable subject matters that we as young people are currently dealing with. I saw someone say on TikTok that in this generation, to really blow up, you have to quote-unquote activate your fans. With this Brat era, Charli did exactly this. When we compare Brat to Charli's second highest charting album, 2022's Crash, we can see a vast difference in the reception from her core fanbase. While Crash was supposed to be a play on Charli selling out and making a mainstream pop album, many fans cite this album as their least favorite of hers. Now, don't get me wrong, this album is a solid pop album with countless bops. However, I feel as if to Charli fans, it wasn't the side of Charli they know and adore her for. Charli took on many songs written by other people, and the production wasn't nearly as out there as her recent albums before this one, like How I'm Feeling Now and her self-titled. Charli said in an interview with the Face magazine that now Crash didn't resonate so deeply with her. She said, "There were songs on Crash that I would never listen to. I think Charli's fans could feel this and therefore didn't ride as hard for it." She told British GQ when thinking about tapping into a more commercial sound, "Sometimes I tempt myself with going there. But I think the problem is my fan base knows that that's not who I am. So they kind of smell a rat and they're like, this is inauthentic." Now, when we look at fans' responses to Brat, it's a whole other story. Leading up to the release of the album, Charli and her team put together a powerful, while still totally authentic marketing campaign that catered totally to her true fans. She gave her fans events, marketing stunts, special appearances, and a feeling of exclusivity on her 360 Brat private Instagram account. I made a deep dive into why the marketing rollout for Brat was just so effective and genius, and I definitely recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it already after this video. Not only did this era feel like an amplification of what superfans really loved Charli for, Charli recognized them and strengthened her relationship with them, giving them so many memorable moments to take from this era, making them more loyal than ever. Her fans made countless green memes and spread the word of Brat all over social media in a way that no one could ignore. They essentially carried forward the marketing for Brat themselves off the back of Charli and her team and put the whole rest of the internet onto Brat, introducing new fans to the genius of Charli. As I've touched on in some of my previous videos, world building is a key factor in the success of an artist. This means giving the fans a new world to step into and imagine themselves in, where they know exactly what it would look and feel like. In terms of artistry, there has to be a clear intention and theme behind every creative decision. Charli hit the nail on the head with her world building for Brat, to the extent where the term Brat Summer has now been coined. It's sweat, it's cigarettes, and smeared makeup, getting messed up in the club and facing the anxiety and self-doubt that comes the next morning. It's freedom and self-awareness all in one. It's the highs and lows of being a person navigating their way in modern society and looking hot while doing it. Brat Summer is about being unapologetically messy in a beautiful, authentically human way. With Brat, the message has always been clear and in our faces. We don't have to search for hidden meanings, it is what it is, and we get it off the bat. We see this reflected not only in the lyrics, but also other promotional tactics, like the title of the deluxe album, Brat, and it's the same, but there's 3 more songs, so it's not. There's also an interesting point to be said on the cultural impact of Brat Summer versus past summer trends like last year's Barbie Summer and 2019's Hot Girl Summer coined by Megan Thee Stallion. Barbie Summer was dainty and wholesome feminism, while Hot Girl Summer had a connotation of summer hookups and situationships. On the other hand, Brat Summer doesn't come with any expectations other than having the best time and being your most authentic self through the ups and downs. The power of Brat Summer is learning about yourself through these ups and downs and having the best memories to look back on. In conclusion, with a flawless mix of perfect timing as far as the current landscape of the mainstream, a killer marketing rollout, and a new curated world for us as listeners to embrace and step into, it's no wonder why Brat has been the album to propel Charli XCX back into the mainstream, leading to her finally receiving her flowers. I think Brat is going to influence a string of artists in the years to come and is already going down as a monumental moment in pop culture. One of my favorite creators on TikTok, Coco Mocoe, explains what she names the pendulum theory. I think it exactly sums up what's led to Charli's career skyrocketing this summer with the success of Brat.
If you want to be popular online, you have to be willing to be unpopular first. What you have to do is focus on what you are good at. What do you like to do? And even if it's not popular at the time, trust that eventually that thing, because trends move so quick, is going to become popular, and you are going to be the perfect person at the perfect time to be the face of that movement.
When the Vroom Vroom EP came out, the average listener didn't know how to grasp this type of music, and Charli was pushed aside. 8 years later, now that the pendulum has swung back into the direction of favoring Charli's sound that was once disregarded, she is finally having her moment, and I am so happy for her. This really is a testament to sticking to your instincts and what makes you different as an artist and a human, whatever your interest may be. Thank you all so much for watching. As you all have really seemed to love my Brat series, I have a couple more videos coming, as well as some on other artists too. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss them if you haven't already. We're growing this channel so fast and it really means the world to me. It feels so special to have a community of music lovers that really appreciate great artistry, and every comment, like, and subscription never goes unnoticed. Love you all and see you next time.